No one in our business had actually gone through a big ERP system change before. So we partnered up with someone we knew who had done it, who could help guide us through the process. That being said, there's always things you can learn from on these projects. So for us, some of the big ones were around
Welcome everyone. It's Mile Dimkovski, Executive Director at SMC. We've got Nick Germyn here from NCIG, and he's going to tell us about his experience. Thanks very much for joining us, Nick.
Thanks for inviting.
So first, let's start with a bit of an introduction on yourself and NCIG.
Okay. Yeah, so my name's Nick. I've been with NCIG for about 15 years now. I was actually involved in the construction project and then through a couple of different consultants, and now I've been an NCIG employee for about 8 years. So NCIG is a coal export terminal. Our business is around unloading our customers' coal off trains, stockpiling it, and then loading onto ships for sale. Our business operates on a cost recovery model rather than direct sales. So in this case, we're actually like a service provider for our customers. We're also a relatively small business. So we actually only have 110 employees, even though we're quite a large
operation.
Yeah. And a highly contracted workforce for most of our maintenance as well. So, yeah.
And so you mentioned that you've just done the project and kind of on the back end of it now and done some lessons learned recently. But just maybe take us back to the beginning to a little bit about why NCIG undertook this journey.
Yep. Yeah, good. So the ERP project really kicked off probably about 7 or 8 years ago. It was formulated as an identification that our existing systems really were letting the business down in a couple of key areas. And the partner that we had previously struggled to be able to keep up with our desire for continuous improvement and change. So that really kicked off a bit of an initiative alongside some other projects around looking into whether a replacement system was an option. So yeah, as you mentioned, in about 2020, we kicked off a digital transformation project involving SMC, where you guys helped us with mapping our business processes, identifying our pain points, surveying our business, and really kicked this project into what we've referred to as the justification phase.
Yeah. And 2020 was obviously the start of what we now call the pandemic.
Yes. So yeah.
What were some of the challenges you faced specific with the pandemic and that process work?
A lot of our employees and people involved in that business process mapping were really going through a lot of change. And being involved in a process mapping workshop was also a very new activity to them, and combine that with working from home and other pressures that came with a changing environment. I think they struggled to probably provide the input they needed to review it. Certainly wasn't as efficient as it could be, and maybe didn't get exactly the outcome we're hoping there. So still a very worthwhile process, and it needed to happen. But yeah, it was challenging. After the process mapping, the pain point identification, and really our core business requirements and project objectives were defined, we went through a selection process, and SMC helped us with that. We shortlisted probably half a dozen vendors and did a bit more of a deep dive on those. It was pretty clear to us through that selection process that an all-in-one system that would meet both our finance, procurement, inventory, warehousing, and maintenance requirements wasn't going to eventuate, not in our price point and the target we were looking at. So we made a decision during that process to go for best of breed systems. Again, with SMC, we went back out and reviewed some of those options, looking for targeted finance systems and targeted maintenance systems. And we went into a plan and prepare phase.
With the plan and prepare, I mean, you said it was worthwhile. Like, what did you find were the good things about it,
Yeah, so I think the process for us was the vendors actually doing a demonstration of their product, talking through their implementation methodologies, and really looking at a detailed analysis of NCIG's requirements and talking through and designing how their systems could meet our requirements. NCIG had to be willing to adapt some of our business processes to suit the systems as well. So there's a very much a give and take type of relationship there. And one of the biggest benefits of this process for us was that it became clear that the maintenance provider that we'd picked going into plan and prepare, the system itself wasn't quite suited to what NCIG needed. And that really came out in the detailed workshops and the requirement gathering and looking at our business processes. And there were some areas where we weren't willing to adapt our business processes to suit the system. So we knew we needed to make a change.
Yeah, fair enough, right? And that's the whole point of the plan and prepare. I think that's what you were kind of alluding to. It kind of aligns expectations, and it rarely happens that you take a solution out, I guess. But if you need to, then you need to make that choice. And it's better to make it then than halfway through an implementation.
Would have been a disaster if we discovered that during an implementation.
How did you find working with SMC through all those changes, What did you think about the process?
Yeah, it was really good working with SMC. I think their experience in understanding best practice from a business perspective was something that NCIG was interested in. We had an existing system, and a lot of our existing business processes were built around that system's functionality and its capability. We're a lean business, but we're a business that's very interested in strong governance controls and a low appetite for risk.
Right.
So with those in mind, we utilised SMC's experience to come up with new best practice business processes that suited our systems. And there was actually a moment where our executive team couldn't get alignment on a future business process, and we actually utilised Jesse from SMC, and he came and helped facilitate a workshop with our executive team where we helped design a business process that everyone was happy with. Of course, we had to make some compromises, but it was really, really valuable to get an external opinion as someone who's seen how these things can play out in businesses and give
independence, right?
Yeah.
Well, how did NCIG think about and handle the change?
While this is a large technology project, it's also a big people project, and the change management aspects associated with it can't be ignored, can't be underestimated. Yeah. So we made a decision during that plan and prepare actually to structure our project team with a dedicated change resource who could help manage change through the project. Yeah. That also involved then formulating a good project team with a mix across our business, but also our owners, our sponsors and our steering committee were carefully selected to have a representative across our business to ensure that whatever systems, whatever processes we adopted would be accepted and would be any change would be able to be sustained for the long term.
Yeah, so you're not just transforming the technology, you're transforming the business and how you operate.
Correct.
To a certain extent, right?
Yep.
You mentioned the plan and prepare, you changed tack on the maintenance front, but you went ahead with DXC and then you went into the implementation. So tell us a little bit about that process. Like
the project kicked off straight into a design phase where we actually got hands-on with the system. We configured things and tested things and made sure they worked the way they wanted. That process was highly valuable, and I'm really glad it happened when it did, because we did discover some things that didn't come up during plan and prepare. And we had to manage project change from our desired business processes and what would eventually be, were not always in alignment. But we did have our initial project objectives and our pain points to fall back on as our guiding principles that would push us through without getting bogged down on the detail of specifics around design.
That's you're getting more certainty as you go through the process. So essentially when you're in process improvement, it's an introspective kind of internal exercise to get everything down on paper and get those guiding foundational principles. Yep. You get into a selection, and the idea is that to the best of your knowledge, you're decreasing the unknown by doing a bit more detail, but you're also not going down into the weeds too much, because there is really no point at that stage, right? You need to kind of culturally align, you need to functionally align at a higher level. And in the plan and prepare, I see as the beginning of the design. Yep. Right. So it's kind of like a high level design. So at each point, at each one of those phases, and it's really important that they are handled as phases, that you don't mix the phases together.
Yeah. And these challenges were really around the ability for the resources involved in the project to help guide NCIG through how the system could best solve some of our problems.
One key takeaway I would take from those comments is that you always have to be willing to make a slight adjustment if you're kind of running into an issue.
And I think that was a big area that that both Radhika as the project manager and Philip in his role as trusted advisor, they were able to help remove those roadblocks efficiently while keeping the project on track and on our original timeline.
Understood. So now you're live and
Yeah, so
happy?
yeah, we've successfully we went live on the 1st of July, the new financial year and our new system.
What kind of an impact did the go live have on your operations? Yeah, often we say whenever you put these systems in place, there is a little bit of a period of adjustment. Yep. So what would you say the main impacts were?
Look, we had a really smooth transition between our systems. We actually released some of our maintenance system functionality a couple of months earlier to a select group.
Yeah.
It was a way of trying to minimize the blast radius of change and also collect some of that feedback from users before we opened up to the wider business.
Kind of like a soft rollout.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was quite a non-eventful go live almost. It was
no, that's what you want.
It is.
with these kinds of projects, it's almost like if you don't hear about it, negative, and then it's good, you know. Do you feel the organization feels like they've gotten the benefits and the expectations that they had at the beginning of the project, even if some of them aren't 100% there yet? But do you think that you're on the right track and they actually feel like they've gotten what they were after?
Definitely.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've created a partnership with the implementation partner ongoing?
Yeah, so we've actually, they're engaged for our support contract as well now.
Excellent.
And we have a plan to continuously improve our systems. And we have budget locked in and positions locked in to make sure that we can keep building and growing as our business changes. Because
that's really important is throughout this process, it's not about just getting something in. It's about forming a partnership.
It's actually one of the reasons why we moved away from our previous system was that we didn't quite have that same relationship. We struggled to adapt and to change, and it became too difficult to actually modify our existing system. So it effectively stagnated and it didn't keep up with where the business was heading. So it was very important to us to have a system that was able to adapt as we as a business changed.
Yeah. What are some of the key takeaways that you'd like to leave people with?
Look, I think the things that we did right was we partnered with a company like SMC early on in the process. No one in our business had actually gone through a big ERP system change before. So we partnered up with someone we knew who had done it, who could help guide us through the process. So I think that's one big key element. We took their advice as well. So
it's one thing to hear it, it's another thing to action it. Yeah.
So biggest one was around resourcing. So don't underestimate the amount of resourcing you need from internal to your business to help deliver on one of these projects. So we actually backfilled a number of the key roles to make sure that they had the time to dedicate to the projects. Again, I've talked about our steering committee and our executive level having buy-in to the project from the start. So that was another key element. And more importantly, we structured the project team so that the users who would actually be the owners of the system after the project were actually involved in the project team and had the responsibility of ensuring the system was configured, tested, and people were trained on how to use those systems. So they had ownership the whole way through the project. It wasn't hand off to someone else.
Yeah.
And look, even though I had experience in system implementations before, this particular type of project in an ERP with an external vendor was something that I hadn't done. So I was...
there are some nuances, aren't there?
There were. And I was lucky to have SMC support through Radica as project manager, assisting me through the project and offering that expertise and that guidance where my knowledge of this process and how things worked weren't quite there. So
great.
Yeah, we had a good partnership.
Nick, thank you so much for joining us on the couch. We call it on the couch. So thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it and really glad to hear where the project is at. I mean, I've been kind of a bit removed from it, being over in WA, but I've been hearing really good things and I really appreciate your time today, and hopefully our audience has gotten a lot of value out of this. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Cheers.